Italian embassy in Egypt, and PRIMA Italy, Professor Angelo Riccaboni and all his team, and Professor Claudio Margottini, the former culture attaché in Egypt. And I would like to start off by thanking all of you for being here today at this Egypt-Italy webinar, which is an incredible networking opportunity for all of us. The purpose of our webinar today is to enhance Egypt-Italy cooperation and participation of researchers in PRIMA. And I'm honored that the Ministry of Higher Education with Galala University and PRIMA Italy and the Italian Embassy are hosting this event, and that's to able to contribute to the creation of a virtual platform for connection. For more than 3 years now, PRIMA has been a connecting platform between Mediterranean countries, fueling collaboration between researchers, innovators, and other members of academia. The work that has been done so far and continues to be developed is, however, only the beginning, and we're looking forward for more. As countries, Egypt and Italy have always enjoyed a fruitful friendship over the past years, an aspect which can and should be expanded and reflected on the scientific front. And today is one of the opportunities for such an expansion to happen and to foster ideas between innovative ways in which collaboration between Egyptian and Italian researchers and academia and SMEs and the private sector can develop. Additionally, today will also serve to shed more light on the opportunities that all of us can have from PRIMA. Thank you all once again for joining this webinar and for your desire to expand into new opportunities, and I hope that it will be fruitful and informative for all. And now my pleasure and honor to ask Professor Angelo Riccaboni to give a speech, and this will be followed by my very dear friend Claudio Margottini, the former culture attaché in Egypt. Professor Riccaboni, please.
Thank you, Professor El-Shinawi. Thanks a lot to the Ministry of Higher Education and Scientific Research of Egypt, Galala University, and the Italian Embassy in Egypt for organizing this very important and interesting initiative. I don't want to add much to what already my dear friend Mohamed has just said. We as PRIMA consider equal footing as the key principle for our initiative. So we know and we are very proud that PRIMA is run according to co-governing, co-decision, co-making. So we are very pleased to do everything together. And this principle is respected also in our course. In the course, the basis of PRIMA is the fact that each partnership participating to a call needs to have researchers from both the coast of the Mediterranean. So this is very important, and this is allowing PRIMA to be really a very important bridge among Europe and Africa, and we are very proud of it. We want to do more, as Mohamed just said, and this meeting happens in a very important moment for PRIMA because we are thinking about the future. You always need to think about the future, but in this moment in particular. So we are thinking about what PRIMA will be in 25, 26, and on. And I think that meetings like these show that the future of PRIMA is to promote exchanges among our researchers, to promote, to have more closer laboratories, more closer researchers, but also to bring the results of our activities to our communities and to our enterprises. So this event is very important for us, and I do thank Mohamed for having organized it, and I'm very pleased to listen to your activities. Mohamed, back to you.
Thank you so much, Angelo, for this word. And I would like, before we start, to have a small opening from Professor Claudio Margottini.
Yes, thank you very much, Mohamed, for this kind invitation. Thank you very much, Angelo, for your big effort together with Mohamed in promoting PRIMA in the Mediterranean. And I'm really very pleased and very happy to have this webinar here. We have been discussing many times in the past about the possibility to organize some joint meeting Italy and Egypt. But finally, we reached some kind of compromise due to the present pandemic situation. But the most relevant thing is that people are involved. There are many experts already present here, and this is a very good news. As a former scientific attaché in the embassy, I am really very happy that the cooperation between Italy and Egypt is still growing, and the PRIMA is probably the most relevant opportunities for having cooperation between our two countries. A cooperation that is also dedicated to other countries, but clearly can see in Italy and Egypt the two pillars from Southern Europe and North Africa as cooperating countries in these programs. So I really thank you very much for organizing this webinar, and I'm very happy to see that many people, many scientists are here, and I hope this will be very fruitful and collaborative meetings for the more successful about PRIMA in the future. Thank you very much, Mohamed and Angelo.
Thank you so much, Claudio. And as usual, we are always looking for the cooperation between Egypt and Italy. And allow me that before we start, I give you a hint about today's meeting. We will have a small introduction from Antonella from the Secretariat, which was the project coordinator in PRIMA. And then it will be followed by a presentation by Dr. Mohamed El-Shinawi, the project officer from PRIMA, for about around 30 minutes, talking about the PRIMA proposal writing and tips and tricks. This will be followed by that we will be divided into 3 rooms. And I thank our moderators today. There will be room 1 for agri-food, moderated by Dr. Hussam Shawqi. And room 2 will be for farming, which is moderated by Dr. Mohammed Nagib El-Hilali. And room 3 will be talking about Nexus and water, moderated by Dr. Hussam Shawqi. And then by the end, we will have a final wrap-up. So I hope that you'll enjoy this webinar and that we'll finish on time. And I think Antonella will be giving a small presentation about PRIMA. The floor is yours, Antonella.
Yes. In fact, I'm replacing Antonella. I'm Giovanni Stangelini. I'm supporting the office of the chairs, both Professor Riccaboni and Dr. El-Shinawi. I thank Antonella for the presentation that I'm going to share with you. We prepared it together, and I will briefly introduce you to some specific aspects of PRIMA and PRIMA calls. So I'm sharing the slides. Just give me confirmation that you can have it in front of you. Are you seeing them?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
So here are some specific aspects of 2021 calls. We know that it's the 4th year of calls after the first very successful 3 years in which we, as a PRIMA, we funded 129 projects. Here is a bit how the topics are identified. The topics are, of course, in line with the strategic innovation and research agenda. They are elaborated within an annual work plan, and then at the beginning of the year, the calls are usually open. And by the way, this is a good opportunity to highlight that PRIMA calls are now open, and they are open until April 13 and April 21, depending on respectively for Section 1 and Section 2. Here are the 3 main areas that Mohamed has summarized, with the 4th very important one, the so-called Nexus, which in a more strategic view try to align management of water, farming system, and agri-food value chain, which are of course very key for the area. So the calls are within these four main areas. And of course, as you can see, the areas are somehow large. Within each of them, there are subtopics which are identified year by year. Some priorities are identified, and these topics, these priorities, are then the object of the specific calls. Many of you might be familiar with the structure. I just summarize briefly. There are three sections, and I want to focus in particular on section 1 and section 2. Section 1 basically derives from, both of them are managed at the Barcelona level, so at the level of the PRIMA Foundation, which is the entity that has been established back in 2017 for the management of the projects and the program. And section 1, the resources comes from the support of the European Commission, while section 2 are dealt mainly with resource at national level. What is important to underscore is that in order to participate, the consortium has to have at least 3 legal entities belonging to at least 2 different, well, at least 1 country from the south and 1 country from the European ones. So at least 3 legal entities, of which at least 1 coming from a European state, and at least 1 coming from the 8 countries participating in PRIMA, which are not European. So the rules for participation is the same both in section 1 and in section 2. And this is the presence of this section 2, this effort and the role of our ministries is a key feature of PRIMA. 2021 is the 4th year. There is an increasing role of innovation, and we want to promote further innovation activities. Another aspect that is increasingly relevant is the multi-stakeholder approach. So proposals that show this multi-stakeholder approach within their proposals are somehow very well evaluated. Similarly, of course, we, in terms of innovation, we do not want to focus exclusively on digital or technological innovation, which of course is a key component, but we also value social innovation and organizational innovation within the 4 areas that I've just mentioned. Moreover, another aspect that is somehow increasingly relevant in the proposals is the social dimension. Because as you all know, the 4 areas that I've mentioned before, and in particular water management, farming system, and food value chains, also have important implications in terms of the social dimensions. So this idea of social dimensions is very much valued within the PRIMA calls. Another aspect, which is somehow a framework umbrella of which you are familiar with, is the sustainability, which is a key point of reference for all of us. Here, there are the different types of actions or innovation actions that are funded through PRIMA. And in particular, there are some actions, some calls that focus on a higher level of innovation, the so-called innovation action, the green one, those that in the so-called EU systems refers to technology readiness level of 7 or 6, so they are closer to the market, they have a higher degree of innovation. But also, PRIMA has funded and will continue to fund projects, proposals of research and innovation, so where the level of innovation is not that advanced in terms of market orientation. And what is important to underline is also that in 2021, we will have also prize for innovation proposals that will be of a small scale in terms of amount of money for the projects, but which will focus on some specific innovative solutions, and I will be more clear later on. Here, again, in summary, the calls of 2021 divided Section 1, Section 2. I remind only that Section 1, the deadline is April 13, Section 2 is April 21. The thematic areas are the same, and these are the main similarities. Of course, you see that W.E.F.E, the so-called Nexus calls, the calls that are meant to integrate water, farming, and food, are only, as you can see, in Section 1. Here, an important slide on the budget, and with specific reference to, with more details on Section 1. The 2021 calls will have approximately 68 million euro, of which 33 from Section 1, and the remaining 35 from Section 2, meaning from the contribution, important contribution of the 19 countries, PRIMA countries. So on the left side, you see the breakdown, a bit more of 8 million for water, same amount for farming, similar amount for food, and then the Nexus, again, slightly more than 80 million. And this is kind of relevant contribution. And of this total amount, I refer to 68 million euro, we can expect to have approximately between 30 and 40 projects funded. The results will be at the end of this year, since the procedure is a two-step procedure. So on April, there are the first stage, then evaluation of the proposals. Those that have a higher level of evaluation then will submit a second full proposal, which will be then again scored and ranked. What we can underscore is that we progressively will go with projects of large scale, so that we can somehow emphasize the role of impact, because through these calls, as it has been mentioned before, the scope is to have some impact on the areas. Here, some more specificity of the objective of PRIMA calls, and I want to emphasize the importance again of policy alignment. So European Green Deal, Sustainable Development Goals, despite not, although not mentioned within the topic, they are nonetheless key reference when preparing a proposal. So this idea of build back better and considering green dimension, the resilience of the region are keywords that somehow are relevant in project proposal. Here, more details about the Section 1 and Section 2 divided per thematic area. Water management will have two calls, two topics. One more specific on land degradation and desertification. The second one on Section 2 with, as you can see, a different level of innovation on adaptive water management, but again, in order to address the challenge of water scarcity. In terms of farming, again, there are two topics, one in Section 1, the other in Section 2. Here the focus is on organizational innovation for small-scale farming, because, as we have mentioned before, innovation is not just technological innovation. While in Section 2, you can find a topic, so proposals shall address somehow practices based on agroecology, which is a key concept which is emerging with strength in the international debate in order to address, of course, climate change and with as a specific target, the small-scale farming. The third area, the food area, will focus on the adherence to the Mediterranean diet, which of course is a distinctive feature of our region, and it has close connections with sustainability in terms both of nutritious, environmental sustainability, healthy sustainability. So we have decided to valorize it through a specific topic in Section 1 of around 8 million, more than 8 million. And in Section 2, a more specific call, of course, based on what we are all experiencing. So somehow, again, how to promote and to increase the resilience of small-scale farmers after the pandemic and in COVID-like crisis, because we know that, of course, other problems related to similar crises like the one we are experiencing can emerge. So, what's the role and how to increase the resilience for small scale has been considered a key point. Finally, a call on innovation action on the W.E.F.E, so meaning funding those proposals that try to integrate the three main thematic areas in a single frame. And again, around 8 million meant to fund approximately, two projects. I would say two projects based on the previous years and experiences on the management of this specific nexus, which is water, energy, food, and ecosystems in the Mediterranean region. And specifically on this nexus, PRIMA will also take part to a conference, high-level conference, which is organized together with JRC, European Commission, and the Union for the Mediterranean in autumn. Again, in 2021, there is also this novelty, two prizes of, as you can see, of a small amount of money, 10,000 euro each, of projects, not just proposals, but projects, so completed projects that shall have these three characteristics. So shall demonstrate somehow the socio-economic benefits of their ideas, the ability of uptake of the results, and in particular in terms of the influence, the impact in terms of policy change, and also their ability to be scaled up, which is so the winners of these prizes will be announced at the Nexus conference in autumn, the one I mentioned before. The deadline here is May 15, and it doesn't follow the two steps, the two-stage procedure of the ordinary proposals. So here in summary, the calendar, the first deadline is again April 13 and April 21, and then a tentative calendar, which is, by the way, very accurate. So to have at the end of the year the evaluation of results and the ranking list for the two sections. Here are our references. Of course, Antonella, which works at the Barcelona Foundation together with Mohamed El-Shinawi, and PRIMA at unisi.it, which is my contact point, and of course I remain at your disposal if you have any further clarification. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Giovanni, for this informative presentation, which I hope all participants saw it as informative. And before we move to Dr. Mohamed El-Shinawi, there is a question that was asked in the chat, and it's an important question. So Giovanni, I will ask you the question. In the guidelines of PRIMA, call its written minimum of 3 legal entities established in 3 different countries considered as participating states, as defined in points 5.1.1 of Annual Work Plan 2021. So can you comment on that, Giovanni?
No, this is true. So 3 legal entities belonging to 3 different PRIMA participating states, of which at least 1 from the 11 European states, and at least 1 among the 8 non-European states. So let's assume that a proposal is, let's say, thought and presented by a consortium of 3 legal entities belonging to 3 countries, all of them Europeans. These proposals is not eligible, is not accepted. And similarly, if a proposal is presented by a consortium of 3 legal entities belonging to 3 states, PRIMA participating states, let's say Egypt, Algeria, Morocco, this proposal is not eligible because in this example, this is the last example, what is missing is a legal entity belonging to European states within the PRIMA, the 19 PRIMA participating countries. And for which are the 19, I can list all of them in the chat so that you have in written, but both in the website of the PRIMA Foundation, of course, the 19 countries are well described. So I can send a link in the chat.
Thank you so much, Giovanni. Before we move to Dr. Mohamed El-Shinawi, another question was asking about the technology readiness level in the slides to be considered start or end of the project, and El-Shinawi answered the technology readiness level should be the final TRL that you will achieve within your project. And I think this will move us to Mohamed El-Shinawi presentation, the tips and tricks, and how to write a winning proposal for PRIMA. El-Shinawi, the floor is yours.
Okay, thanks a lot, Dr. Shinawi. I think you can see my screen, right?
Yes, El-Shinawi. It's
perfect.
Well shared.
Okay, so good afternoon, everybody in Italy and in Egypt. My name is Mohamed El-Shinawi. I am the PRIMA project officer for AgroFood in Barcelona Secretariat, in PRIMA Secretariat in Barcelona. In my presentation today, I'm gonna have 2 parts. The first part about how to submit and to apply, and also to give you some inside information about the evaluation procedure that we are applying in PRIMA, so you will be familiar with this procedure. And the second half of the presentation will talk about some tips and tricks on how to draft your pre-proposal for the first stage. Okay, because we finished the last presentation, the first part with Giovanni with some questions about the eligibility and admissibility, how to make sure that my consortium is eligible. So I'm gonna to start my presentation with this part. First, before applying, I have to check as a consortium that our project is admissible and eligible. To be admissible, it has to be submitted through the electronic submission system, the ESS, and it has to be readable, accessible, and printable. You have to consider that the assessors tend to print out your documents and your proposal and to evaluate it on paper. So it is very important to make sure that it is printable, it is clear, and you didn't use like very tiny font, for instance, or pixelated images or figures. It has to be complete with all obligatory supporting documents, and we are going to discuss this in the next slides. And finally, to have a draft plan for the exploitation and dissemination of the results. This is not required in the first stage in details, but for sure it is important to shed the light on some of the main activities that you are going to do for dissemination and communication. The page limit for the first stage, which is the current one, it's the pre-proposal or part 2, maximum 10 pages. The system is smart enough to realize that if you try to submit like 11 or 12 or more pages, it will alert you that you exceed the maximum number of pages, and maybe in this case you need to revise your pre-proposal or part 2 to make sure that it is within this limit. During the second stage, for only those will be shortlisted and invited to the second stage, the part 2 or the scientific document, you will have up to 50 pages maximum to draft your full proposal. The second point, which is the eligibility check that we are applying. As Giovanni and Dr. Shinawi already mentioned, that for research innovation action and for innovation action for section 1 or section 2 for any thematic areas, you have to have at least 3 independent legal entities from 3 different PRIMA participating states. And you can see that at least you have to have one at least established from EU member states, such as Italy in our case, and at least one must be established on PRIMA non-EU countries, such as Egypt, Morocco, Tunisia, Algeria, and so on. Some cases or most famous questions that we used to receive, like if I have 1 partner from Italy and 3 partners from Egypt. Okay, this is ineligible consortium because you don't have 3 different participating states. You have only Italy and Egypt. Or in another case, like if I have Italy, Egypt, and Austria. So in this case, it is also ineligible because Austria is an EU member state, but it is not a PRIMA participating state. One of the most famous questions that we used to receive, like if I have a consortium of Italy, Germany, Egypt, and Tunisia, and Sweden, for instance. So is it an eligible consortium? Can this Swedish or Austrian or Dutch partner can receive a grant? It is yes, because first you satisfy the eligibility criteria. You have at least 1 from the south, 1 from the north, at least 3 different participating states. And this extra EU member state goes extra above this limitation or this eligibility criteria. And for section 1, those EU member states and non-PRIMA participating states can receive a grant, such as Scandinavian countries or Austria or Netherlands and so on. For section 2, but it has to be deemed essential for the project, and they should be a partner, not the coordinator of your project. For section 2, they can participate with their own grant. Some of the very famous question, my last famous question that we used to receive here, that can I invite some partners from US, for instance, or China or Latin America, for instance? They can participate in section 1 or section 2 with their own grant. From the PRIMA website, you can find all information that you wanted to have in order to apply, the whole section, information and guidelines, all templates for the first stage and for the second stage, and link to the submission website. You have, for instance, one link for each code. For instance, if I'm going to apply to agri-food section 1, so you'll find a specific submission link to this, and I'm going to show it to you in the next slides. Also, we have two very interesting tools as well on the PRIMA website. The PRIMA partnering tool, which is some applicants or potential applicants who are looking for some partners. So they are publishing their profiles or their ideas. So they are looking for some partners, or they are presenting their profiles to be picked up by other consortia. And also expert registration tool, which is a tool that we invite all scientists and researchers to register their profile there, because we use this tool as well to select the reviewers and experts for the evaluation procedure. So if you go to the PRIMA website under call for proposal, you will go for the reference documents. So it will open to you the different sections of the topics for this year. So you will pick your most relevant topic for you, press more information, and it will open to you this page with all details and all documents related to your interested topic. And then you click on submit your proposal, and it will direct you to the electronic submission system on the ENR French platform. You will be asked to enter your username or email address and password if this is your first time, so you can create you can sign up. Once you log in, and here we are talking about the role of the coordinator, because the coordinator who is the one who will generate and will create this page, project page on the electronic submission system. So the coordinator will enter the title of the project in English and in French. It can be the same in English if you want, because we are only accepting the English language. And some basic information about your project. We also developed on the PRIMA website electronic submission system handbook, which is also very useful to be checked by the coordinator and the partners to be more familiar with the system. And then the coordinator can add the partners. So once he adds you, so you will receive this notification email that you have been assigned or participated in a project. So you will be able to log in and to check and to complete your profile there. What is needed to submit your proposal? As we said, you need to have an eligible consortium and to submit all required documents. For the first stage, you have part 1, which is administrative data, part 2, or the scientific document, and the budget. During the first stage, you just need to put the global budget. So for instance, in our project, we wanted to ask for 2.5 million. And the breakdown for each partner is like for the Egyptian partner is 200,000, for the Italian coordinator, whatever, 300,000, and so on, without going to the details of the breakdown, like how much for the personnel, for the other costs, consumables, and so on. Because this will be asked during the second stage. On the second stage, there will be this Excel file or a template that you can download from the PRIMA website. You fill the detailed budget of the project and then uploaded it as an Excel file to the system. And then we do the admissibility check and eligibility check as I presented to you in the beginning. To be familiar with the evaluation procedure, that once we receive this application from the electronic submission system, we check the admissibility and eligibility check in Barcelona, in PRIMA Secretariat in Barcelona for Section 1 and for Section 2. For Section 2 projects, we also send your profile and your projects to the involved national funding agencies. In case of Egypt, for instance, the SRIA and ASRT will have access to the projects that request a grant from them. And in case of Italy, it is MIUR in Italy. And once we have the final list of eligible and admissible projects for Section 1 and Section 2, we in the PRIMA Secretariat send it to at least 3 experts to evaluate each project independently and remotely. And then we invite all of them in a physical meeting in Barcelona over 2 days to have this panel evaluation meeting. And you can imagine that it is not just a mathematical equation just to collect the means and the average of the initial score. That's why we are inviting those experts all together to be in a sealed room for over 2 days to discuss project by project in details to make sure that they are okay with their initial score, or they can increase or ascend or descend the final ranking, and then they come out with the final list to be invited to the second stage. We send you the invitation to the second stage, you prepare your proposal, and you submit your final full application. Again, we do the admissibility check and eligibility check. If everything is okay, we send it to the expert evaluation. Then we invite them again to Barcelona to have this panel evaluation meeting and to discuss and to have the final ranking. And once we have the final ranking, we circulated it to the PRIMA Board of Trustees and to European Commission for Section 1 and to the funding agencies for Section 2 to get their approval. And then we start the contracting phase. How or what are the criteria that you are evaluating your pre-proposal or the full proposal in the second stage? So we are exactly applying the same criteria and rules of the H2020. So for the first stage, you have only 2 sections or 2 parts in the pre-proposal, the excellence, which is scored out of 5, and you have as well the impact, which is scored out of 5. On the second stage, you have an extra section or part, which is the quality and efficiency of the implementation of your project, which also scored out of 5. We have some threshold that you need to consider. In the first stage, you have to score at least 4 out of 5 under the excellence and 4 out of 5 under the impact to make sure that in the beginning that your project pass the threshold of the criteria. You can imagine that how tough the competition was if you know that the successful projects that get funded over the last 3 years, the average score, the final score of them at the end of the second stage was around 12.5 or 13 out of 15 in total. So this is something really very important to be considered. And here, very important note as well for innovation action topic, we used to give a higher weight for the impact section. So for instance, if we have 2 equally scored proposals, for instance, like in the first stage or the second stage, it's scored like, let's say 8.5 and 8.5 out of 10 in the first stage. So in this case, the panel and the reviewers will check the score under the impact, because as we can see here, we give a higher weight for the impact score for innovation action, because we wanted to have a project that can really go to the market or address some societal challenges on ground. That's why we give this higher weight, and it's going to be applied during the priority criteria. I will not go through the details of this evaluation criteria under the excellence and the impact and for the second stage for the implementation, but it is very advised to assign maybe an external observer or one of your team to review and to revise your proposal before submitting it, considering those items like the soundness of the concept, the applied methodology is clear, the topic or the project that you are submitting is fitting to the scope and objectives of the PRIMA and the topic that you are going to address, and all these aspects. Final recommendation for the first part, that please don't wait to the last moment to create your profile on the electronic submission system. It is simple, but for sure it takes some time. Be sure, especially if we are talking about a large consortium. For instance, also this is very good information to be sure that based on the analysis of the last 3 years, the average size of a consortium, it's around, we are talking about 9 to 10 partners in a consortium or for a single project. This is for sure the average and not the standard, because sometimes we find like a project funded with 20 partners involved in this, or maybe just 5 partners in the consortium, but we are just here talking about the average. Be sure that you submit as well part 1 or the administrative data, because sometimes we find that the consortium managed to submit only part 2 or the scientific document, but they forgot at the last moment to submit or to upload to the system part 1. That's why it's very important to prepare your own checklist and make sure that you fulfill all requirements and all obligations. Very important as well here to highlight that there is no button on the system called submit. If you are the coordinator and you uploaded all documents and everything is ready to proceed, you will not find the button called, okay, and now I wanted to submit, because the submission will be done automatically at the time and date of the deadline. So for section 1, for instance, on the 13th of April at 5 p.m., the system will lock, and we will evaluate the only proposals and documents already or previously uploaded before the deadline on the system. And we are not accepting under any condition any proposals or part 1 or part 2 delivered by email or by any other mean, but through the electronic submission system. For section 2, it is very important that each one of you need to check your eligibility with the national contact point and with the national funding agency before submitting your proposal. And we strongly advise to keep checking always the PRIMA website if in case of any new news or new updates. Now I will move to the second half of my presentation about how to write a PRIMA competitive proposal. Just to recap, okay, for the pre-proposal, you have part 1 and part 2 only. Part 1, it is 2 parts. For the administrative data, you have an online form that you need to fill directly on the system, and you have a PDF document that you need to upload. You go to the PRIMA website, you find the template for part 1, you downloaded it, you complete, transfer it into a PDF, and then you uploaded it to the system. And you have as well the part 2 or the scientific document or the pre-proposal. It's a Word document that you download from the system, from the PRIMA website. You fill it, maximum 10 pages, you transfer it into a PDF, and then you go to the electronic submission system and you uploaded it under a part 2 part. Now I'm gonna, for the time restriction that we have, so I'm gonna just to give you some tips and tricks on how to draft your part 2 or the pre-proposal for the first stage. For the pre-proposal, we have 2 parts or 2 sections. We have the excellence and we have the impact. And during the second stage, you will have this full application. But now we will just focus on, to avoid any confusion, we will just focus on the sections and the parts of the pre-proposal or the first stage. As we said, 10 pages. The excellence, you have 4 points to address, and under the impact, it is only a single point to be addressed. So this is the structure and the main sections of part 2, which is exactly the same for section 1 or for section 2 for any topic or for any thematic area. You have the title and acronym of your project, and the best source to draft your title is the call topic itself or the topic itself, the topic text itself, because you can find out some keywords or important ideas from it, and then you, with your team, with your partners, you can start to puzzle these words in order to draft a very attractive acronym and title for your project that can deliver to the assessors from the first impression the idea or the objective of your project. And then you have a table of partners, its countries, and the principal investigators. And here it is very important to keep all tables and the numbering of your partners and work packages and everything consistent in part 1 and in part 2 and on the electronic submission system. For the first section or the first part, which is the excellence, as I said, you have 4 points. You need to present your objectives, the overall and the specific one. For sure, you are familiar with this term, SMART objective, that your objective has to be specific, it has to be measurable, it has to be achievable, it has to be realistic, so to avoid overestimation, and to have to be timing, that within the time frame of your project, you can manage to achieve it. It is suggested maybe to use some bullet points to summarize or to present your specific, and you can numbering them like SO1 or SO2 for specific objective 1 and 2 and so on. Be precise and specific, and avoid please to open goals or overestimation, because this will be negatively evaluated by the assessors, because they will consider the knowledge and expertise of the consortium members, the budget that you are requesting, and the time frame, and it will be matched or evaluated against your objectives to see if it is realistic or not. Reflect what is already written in the call text. That's why it is very important to keep read it again and again and again, and then do this reflection from the call text to the idea or the objective of your project. Avoid the general and open and narrative description, because remember that you have only 10 pages, so we need to use it wisely. Specify as well the geographical coverage. Like for instance, if in my project I have 5 countries, but we are gonna to have some demo plans, for instance, in Egypt and Jordan. So it is important to highlight this, my partners, my countries involved in my project, and where are we gonna to implement some specific or main actions. Also specify the main stakeholders, the target groups, and the main deliverables. Due to the limitation in the pages, remember that in your project you have like 50 deliverables. In the first stage, you needn't to list down these 50 deliverables, but maybe it is important just to zoom on the most important and major deliverables, like we are going to have 2 prototypes, 3 final products, 1 platform, and so on. So this is very important, and it will save to you some spaces. The second point under the excellence, which is 1.2, the relation between my idea and project and to the call topic. Again, it is a reflection from the call text. That's why it is very important to make sure that my project is 100% fitting to the scope and to the expected results of the topic that I'm going to address. It states as well how my project are going to address the PRIMA Strategic Research Innovation Agenda, the goal of 2021, and the topic of agri-food or water or whatever. That's why it is very important here to consider that you are not just addressing the topic that you are going to address, but also you need to satisfy as well the predefined KPIs of Strategic Research Innovation Agenda at the level of the program, or the scope or the identity of the goal of this year. Also, we here put some relevant policies that you need as well to consider, that such as if there are some EU policies or strategies or regional or national strategies that can support your idea, it is very important to highlight this. And thanks for Giovanni during his first presentation. He mentioned something about the EU Green Deal or Horizon Europe and similar initiatives and strategies. Okay. You can use, but for sure it's up to you, but maybe it is, we used to see such a tabular form to match between the challenges and the scope of the topic, the goal, and the Strategic Research Innovation Agenda, and your project responses and activities. Also highlight the relevance of your project to the target Mediterranean countries in your consortium, and show if there is any synergy between your project and any other national or regional or global level initiatives. 1.3, it's about the idea itself. Okay, it has 2 parts. Part 1, which is the concept, which are the main ideas of your project, the overall concept underpinning your project, the partner's knowledge and its rules and interdisciplinary, and this is very important that to make sure, and this is something that the assessor used to evaluate carefully. Like each one of your partners has a role in the consortium, and the interdisciplinary, like I have some partners from the private sector, from the academia, from research centers, from public authorities, and so on. So such a balance in the participation and the engagement of the partners and its role, it is very important, and it used to be evaluated deeply by the assessors, because sometimes you invite a partner like from X country just as a passport to pass the eligibility check. The assessors will realize this and is going to be negatively evaluated. So this is something really important to be considered. Measure the public, societal, and stakeholder engagement and how you are going to make sure or guarantee such engagement. Position your product in the spectrum from like idea to application or from lab to market. And this highlights the importance of the technology readiness level. As already mentioned here on the chat, that it is important to reflect on the proposal, the pre-proposal, and the second stage as well, the initial and the final TRL that you are going to achieve at the end of the project. And also show any synergy or complementarity between your project and any national, regional, or international actions or policies, such as the SDGs, for instance, or the UN 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. The second part of 1.3, which is the applied methodology or the overall approach that you are going to implement in order to translate the objectives into a tangible result at the end. Present the logic behind the work package structure, please, because this is one of the common mistakes in the pre-proposal, that as a scientist, we tend to use a lot of spaces and pages for presenting the scientific details, the specific actions and activities that we are gonna to implement. Please consider you have only 10 pages in the first stage. So what is important here is to present the logic behind the work packages, structure, the main actions, the main tasks and the locations, the work package leaders, time frame, and so on. And at the last slide, I'm gonna to share with you some maybe useful table that maybe can be used to present your idea better in a better way and to save some spaces as well. Present as well the technologies and its rationale, like why you select those technologies, like it will save the time or whatever, and specify the actions or the activities, if it is a research or a demo or piloting or market replication, and analyze the gender dimension at the level of your consortium and the target groups and the final beneficiaries of your project. The last part under the excellence, which is 1.4, which is the ambition. How far you are going to go beyond the state of the art. So you need to present the novelty of your idea and the added value, showing the innovation potential of your project, such as, okay, we are going to produce new products, or we have some very interesting services or new organizational model. Also compare between your technology that you are going to develop within your project and its advantages over the already existing alternatives in the market. Like, my solution are going to save the cost or increase the efficiency of production 20%, decrease the losses by 30%, brief and size as well, briefly define the nature and size of the tackled market, and you can use some references, figures, and tables and charts when appropriate for you. This is the end for the excellence, and now for the impact, you will have for sure some expected impacts or results at the end. So it is important to classify those impacts into social impact, economic, environmental, political, or scientific and technological advancement in your project. You need as well to quantify, you have a quantified indicators and to set targets and values, such for instance, we are going to have 2 final products, 1 platform, 2 demo sites. So it's very important to have some indicators and to put a value for it, and how you are going to verify and measure those indicators. Also, you need to identify your target groups and the final beneficiaries, such as small farmers or smallholders, and so on, and geographical coverage. So for instance, if we are going to have in our project, we will address the needs of small farmers in Italy and in Egypt and Jordan, for instance. Okay, so it's very important to show to the assessors the demands and constraints for those beneficiaries, and how my project I'm gonna to improve the quality of life of those target beneficiaries. Also, you need to consider the cross-cutting areas such as the ICT revolution or gender aspects, and show the innovation capacity, such as creating or opening new market opportunities, opening new startups or job placements, and any other important benefits for the society. General remark for the pre-proposal stage, please consider that it is 2 sections, the excellence and the impact, or 2 parts, the excellence and the impact, with equal scores, equal threshold out of 5. So you need to pay equal attention to both sections or both parts, because sometimes you can score like very high on the excellence and very low in the impact. So in this case, the project will not fly or pass. So this is something very important. And here we are talking about equal attention, not equal pages, because you need to consider as well for the excellence, you have 4 points to address, but for the impact, it is only a single point. So this is something really to be considered. It is only 10 pages, so use it wisely and don't waste spaces for the implementation. So details, because this will be asked during the second stage. Instead, focus on the methodology, the applied approach, the main actions, the logic behind the work packages, the main outputs and outcomes, and the added value of your project. Quantify as much as you can the outputs, deliverables, KPIs, and the activities. You can present briefly as well in the first stage dissemination, communication, and exploitation actions of your project. How are you going to manage the IPR and other communication actions, for instance, with the target groups and with the stakeholders? Show the interdisciplinary and the rules of your partner from private, from research centers, from SMEs and others. Show the engagement of the stakeholders and the end user and the public, networking and the synergy with other actions, initiatives, strategies in the region or EU level. Use reference figures, tables, and charts when appropriate for you. And it is strongly advised, especially for Section 2 projects, please to communicate with your national contact point and the national funding agencies before applying to PRIMA to make sure that you are eligible to participate and everything is clear and you fulfill all national requirements to apply for Section 2. Okay, some useful tables which is not part of the PRIMA template, it's just for demonstration purpose. Just you can have like a table to list down the challenges or the scope of the topic and how you are going to respond. The technology readiness level table, like you list down the initial TRL, and at the end we will have this final new technology with this final TRL. Show as well the target groups and the final beneficiaries, their demands and the challenges, and how your project are going to satisfy their needs. Some table as well for the dissemination and communication planning. And finally, to list down the list of work packages, start and date, responsible partner, and the main deliverables of each work package. The most common reasons of failure, it's weak project idea, there is no novelty on it, or low relevance between our project and the topic that we are going to address. It is weak consortium and partners overlap together, and unjustified rule of some partners in the consortium, lack of expertise, technical or managerial, unfocused approach or vague or unsmart objectives, unrealistic amount of work in relation to the budget and the time frame, and uncertain long-term impact. And my last slide about like last minute takeaways for you. You need to make sure that you engage external holders and stakeholders, and end users to your consortium and your project. Show the relevance of your project to the PRIMA strategic research innovation, to the call for 2021, and to the topic that you are going to address. You can check as well the communication and visibility manual for the EU external action, because it can inspire you with some ideas on drafting the IPR management, some communication and dissemination actions. Check all with the numbering and the consistency of the partner orders, deliverables, work packages, and tasks. You can invent some tools or diagrams such as Gantt chart or PARTH diagram to summarize and to present better your idea to the assessor. You have to have a measurable KPIs and quantify activities or actions or outputs of your project. Polish and clear your proposal before submitting it to make sure it is more appealed. For sure, we are not talking about like it's not black and white document, but it is not also so colorful, but it has to be attractive and more appeal to the assessor. And finally, last but not least, for sure, very important, please make sure to communicate with your national contact point for any uncertain points. Thank you so much. This is my last slide, and this is our communication. You can approach us on the PRIMA website or PRIMA channels. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mohamed, for this informative presentation. And I hope that all our participants has benefited from it. And now we are going to divide into three categories, 3 rooms. So give us a few minutes. And for those who would like to change the room, please send a message to our support IT engineer Mohamed, and he will change your room. We have 3 moderators for 40 minutes. We are honored to have Professor Ayman Al-Shibbini for food, and Dr. Mohamed Naguib for the agro-food, and Dr. Professor Hussam for the water and Nexus. Allow us as PRIMA that will leave now because of any conflict of interest, and then I will try to join after you finish after the 40 minutes. So within few minutes, you'll be all assigned to 3 rooms. Thank you so much, and hope that you will benefit from this networking that you'll have together. Thank you so much. I think we finished our groups, and I would like to thank our three moderators, Professor Ayman El-Shibini and Professor Mohammed and Professor Hossein for their work. And I hope that you had a good experience with this grouping. It is our first time to do such grouping. We are tired, all of us, from Zoom and WebEx, but we hope that this new technology is helping us. We wish that all of us were being together in person, but hope that the COVID-19 pandemic will be over. But even of this pandemic, it showed the importance of initiatives like PRIMA. I think with this pandemic, we all believe that sharing science, working together, cooperating together is the key to help us in overcoming any of such situations. I would like to hear from our three moderators in short, in 1 minute, their experience, and we hope that the networking had succeeded and looking forward for more cooperation. And I will leave now the floor for Dr. Hossein, then Dr. Ayman and Dr. Mohammed.
Firstly, thank you, Dr. Mohammed, for this presentation, and it's very kindness for GU to invite me for this event. Actually, it was a fruitful discussion between the groups in my room, and there's only one concern or two concerns from the people that they need to circle their bio and their email address for to share knowledge between. We made a very short introduction for the people, and they need this to be circled to each other. And also, the second one is to have the presentation to be sent for all the people that shared in the webinar. The discussion was very fruitful, and there's a lot of ideas, and I think there will be a very good collaboration between Italian and Egyptian sides. And thank you very much again.
Thank you so much, sir. And we assure you that the presentations will be sent to all of those who registered. So we'll send you all the presentations. And if any concerns or you would like to have any questions, please send us an email and we'll connect you with the person you would like. Professor Ayman El-Shibini, I know you have a meeting at 7, so we'll hear you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mohammed, and for all participants. It was a nice presentation and event that we shared knowledge with each other. Actually, in my room, they have some good question regarding the eligibility and the most important tips that we may consider when we apply for this call. And I think we addressed many points that will help them to facilitate the writing the pre-proposal for that will be considered for evaluation. And we mentioned some of the most important points. Actually, you addressed most of it, and Dr. Mohamed El-Shinawi as well made it very, very clear for everybody. But we had a useful discussion, and I share with them my email address in case if they are interested to get back to me for any more clarification or for any collaboration facilitation with Egyptian universities and research centers here in Egypt, inshallah. It was a very successful webinar, very informative and very useful as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ayman. Thank you. It's always a pleasure to have you with us. Always
Thank you very much, Sir.
And
thank
my
you,
dear
Sir.
friend, Dr. Mohamed El-Hilali, Mohamed Najib El-Hilali. Mohamed, please.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Mohammed, and thank you, PRIMA, for allowing us today to start rolling the ball and moving forward in the field of science. Our session today was very comprehended, and we start to engage more between the Egyptian and the Italian side. And hopefully will be further collaboration and further networking that can enhance more and strengthen the tie between both scientists, not just only for the Egyptian Italian, but as well as different Mediterranean and the PRIMA states member. And I just want to thank you so much for this initiative, and hopefully it will be continued in the following time.
Thank you so much, Mohammed. And I apologize for Professor Marco that he couldn't join the farming. But please, Professor Marco, I just saw your chat. Please email me if you need any help in this regard. And our moderators, Professor Ayman, Professor Mohammed, Professor Hussam, will help in doing that. Again, my apology for that. And to here, we come to an end of our webinar. Yes. So to here, we come to an end of our webinar. And I would like to thank all Egyptian and Italian researchers for sharing with us, and looking forward for all your successful proposals for PRIMA 2021. Thank you, and stay safe and have a nice day. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.